Hi, welcome to the channel, Not Your Accountant. Um, I guess don't exactly know what I'm trying to do here, but I had this urge to respond to so a lot of these videos online on YouTube right now that other accountants and professional service providers are putting up with regards to HMRC's new systems, new laws, regulations, etc. Ever since the budget was published, I'm seeing that a lot of people are posting videos online with regards to HMRC's new powers, and most of them seem to be the ones I've seen so far anyway. Seem to be um, more fear mongering than actually portraying what the reality is. And maybe they're trying to portray their version of reality, but to be honest with you, I don't think that's the case. Um, with with most of the videos I've seen so far, except for one or two, which were actually quite good and informational, the other ones tend to be pulling on people's emotions to maybe get you to act and do things that you might not have otherwise considered doing. And sometimes that's not a bad thing, but it just depends, like, who's on the other end of your action. So who's going to serve you in dealing with these new, shall we say, issues, or let's say new legislation, I guess, dealing with the new tax laws, etc. Right? And so what I'm going to do, let's just start off by just to give you also an idea. I'm an accountant myself. I'm not your accountant, but I am an accountant. I've been an accountant for almost 20 years now. I work for myself. I'm self-employed. I have been self-employed for more than 10 years, and I do small business accounts, self-employed individuals, contractors, etc. And my experience over the last 15-20 years of being an accountant, and I've worked at at the big firms. I started with my career at the big firms, and then I moved my way down because I just didn't find myself suited to big corporate culture. And in my experience in the years that I've been an accountant, what I found is that um, sometimes it appears to me anyway that things are different to how a lot of other accountants tend to portray what HMRC is, what HMRC can do, and what they do in action as well. So in actual reality, like what happens when cases are raised, how investigations are done. Most accountants tend to just err on the side of caution, and unless you know them on a personal level, it's going to be hard for you to get like the true juicy information out of them. So hopefully I can give you some of that as much as I can on YouTube, and whatever I can't do on YouTube, I will happily part way with through Substack and other forms. I'll put a link in the description. You can join that. It's a free subscription. You don't have to sign up for anything, and I'm not trying to sell you my services. I just want to highlight that what all these other accounts are saying might not necessarily be true, or at least right now I don't think it is true. So yeah, the first video, the video we're going to watch today is going to be called, and excuse my skills of making this video. I'm an accountant, a boring accountant. I don't really know how to do all this creative stuff. I'm learning. Hopefully I'll figure it all out. In the meantime, let's get stuck in with the video. Okay, so if you type in HMRC 2026 into YouTube, these are some of the videos that will pop up on your feed. The one I wanted to watch, which I've watched before, it's not coming up. Okay, let me just type in the channel's name. The channel is Your Accountant. I'm assuming these guys are some kind of UK-based accounting practice, because that's essentially what they're doing. They're trying to promote their own practice, which is in and of itself, it's not a bad thing to do. There's nothing negative about that. I've been kind of seeing these accounting videos on YouTube, and they don't generally get a lot of views, but they've started getting a lot of views, especially this video, which was uploaded a month ago, and they have 593,000 views as of 1st of January 2026. Happy New Year. Okay, so we watched this video. It's called
Here's the
HMRC
reality.
will get you
Most
in
people that
2026. So
get one of those
skip it back to the beginning.
in 2026, HMRC are going to be coming after more people than ever. And now, of course, I'm not talking about the millionaires or the very wealthy. I'm talking about you, the person who might bake cakes for their local community, a person doing a bit of freelance work on the side, a landlord maybe with one property, or the person who sold a bit of stuff on eBay and made a couple of grand. And here's the reality. Most people that get one of those brown envelopes through the door, they haven't done anything intentionally wrong. They're not tax dodgers. They are just ordinary people getting caught up in a net that's getting bigger, tighter, and more advanced every day. So I'm going to break down exactly why 2020.
Okay, so the video starts off straight away talking about how HMRC are going to be coming after more people than ever. I mean, factually, is that incorrect? I don't know. I don't really have the information or data available to me to make a statement like that. However, you could say that, you know, just generally because the population grows, etc. So he could just be factually correct. They're going to go after more people. But that's not the point. The point is that the language here is generally kind of they're trying to incite some kind of an emotion in you to get you to think that you've got to do things, you've got to take actions if you want to protect yourself, like somehow you are in danger already just because the laws and rules have changed.
D6 is going to be the watershed moment for HMRC compliance, what they're actually doing behind the scenes, and most importantly, how you can protect yourself. Because one thing is clear, you don't want to be caught off guard when a letter does arrive. So why am I specifically talking about 2026? What makes this year so critical? Well, it comes down to two fundamental things, really. Number one is it's far easier now for HMRC to track you than ever before. They've been heavily investing in systems and technology over the last few years. And we're talking about billions of pounds going into things like AI, data matching, automated flagging systems. They can see your bank transactions, your online selling activity, your crypto.
See, that's just not true. They can't see your bank transactions. Not just like that, they can't see everyone's bank transactions. HMRC don't have that power. Not yet, anyway. Maybe sometime in the future they might, but right now they don't. He's taken a small part of the truth and turning it into something, some kind of a sensational point about how HMRC gonna have access to everyone's bank transactions. And he got me the first time I watched this video. He got me, and I'm an accountant, and I started thinking, well, that's a bit crazy. But because I've always been kind of into this, like I've been aware that digital surveillance is coming. It's going to get over time it is going to get you know, more and more difficult to be creative with your accounting. But right now, we're not there yet. There's still, I think, a long way to go before we get to that point where everyone's going to pay the exact amount of tax that the HMRC and the government expect people to pay. But we're nowhere near that. This guy is saying that the HMRC can see your bank transactions. That's a straight incorrect statement. They can request to see your bank statements, but then they have to have a reason for that. Now, it's true, like they do that, the steps that they have to go through in order to get your bank statement is not as many as it used to be, but they still don't have it. There's no direct feed from the bank to HMRC showing them all your transactions. They do send some information automatically, like how much savings interest you're earning on your savings balances in your bank account, and then, you know, there's other changes that have come in, like Etsy, Uber, eBay, Amazon. All these kind of companies will be reporting like your gross sales to HMRC, so that is true, but they do not have access to see all your bank statements.
Trades, your rental income. They've got data sharing agreements with platforms, with banks, and other countries, you know, they're tax authorities. Gone are the days when you could fly under the radar. Everything is digital now. You think about Apple Pay, you know, you've got Google Pay, PayPal, bank transfers, all of these things, they leave a digital paper trail. And
right, so he's saying, well, gone are the days that you could fly under the radar or something along that line, basically saying that you can't really get away with things anymore. again, I don't think this is true. Like, I'm seeing a lot of taxpayers, a lot of businesses that are doing funny business and getting away with it to the extent where I'm actually questioning like how effective the system is. Now, obviously, the point I'm saying is very anecdotal, as is his, because he doesn't really know exactly um, what HMRC have in place, and neither do I. We can just go off our own experiences. So I wouldn't sit here and say that HMRC are definitely incompetent, because it's not really true. But a lot of people do seem to get away with things that you'd only think they can get away with if HMRC were incompetent.
HMRC has the technology to follow that trail. And number two, and being honest here, it's just because the government needs money. They always need money, and HMRC is that direct pipeline to get that money from the largest group of people in this country. It's through taxation, lucratively through fines, penalties, and interest payments. Now, there will be a lot of you, or
I'm just
some
going
of
to
you, that
skip
will
ahead a
say,
bit now
yeah, but
because
HMRC is incompetent. They don't have their
we
act
don't really
together.
want to watch this
And
whole video, do
honestly, I
we?
can tell you historically, there is some
Maybe
truth to
you
that.
want
They
to.
have
You
had
can
limited
if you want to,
resources.
but
There's lots of moving parts, and
there's not
things
that much
have always slipped through the
useful stuff
gaps.
in
But
there, to
that's
be
exactly
honest.
why they're investing heavily in technology platform. It was originally introduced in 2010, but it's had lots of developments since then.
So here he's talking about HMRC's Connect system, which was introduced, as he said, in 2010. So a lot of this stuff isn't new. Like, HMRC have been working on systems to be able to flag more cases with less manual input. That's true. But the reality is that HMRC still need a human being to go through each and every case that they actually want to take further. So all the system does is it's just flagging more cases, and what's going to end up happening, in my opinion, and this is what I think has been happening, is that HMRC are actually hiring people to deal with the cases, but they're not. The people that they're hiring, they don't necessarily have a good financial knowledge. They're not necessarily accountants. They're not even necessarily um, like bookkeepers or anything like to do with finance. They just people that they're hiring and then putting through training. And I think if you've heard about the enshittification of the world, that's happening to everything. HMRC, they can get better systems, but if they don't get more competent people working to actually meet their goals and doing what they want them to do, then not many cases are actually going to get litigated or taken to the point where you end up having to pay a fine or having to pay more taxes or penalties. Because what people fail to understand, and I think what most accountants they don't really like to acknowledge this part of the process, because accountants are meant to be professional people, so they have to act and operate in a certain manner and in accordance with the code of conduct of the authorizing body, etc., right? But the reality is, whenever there's a HMRC case happening, and if this could have happened to you, if you had to deal with a tax investigation, ultimately it's you and the other person that's representing HMRC having a conversation to explain what you submitted, explain your profit figures, explain why your expenses are business expenses. And if you can convince this other person that your accounts are correct, then you're good to go. So, it's not as dire as some of these guys make it sound. Obviously, if you don't take any kind of precaution and if you become careless, the consequences can be severe. But if you keep records, and even if you're a bit creative with your accounting, if you have the right records and the right kind of receipts to justify what you're submitting to HMRC, then you'll be fine. In most cases, HMRC will actually, even if you've made some mistakes, they are quite lenient. They can be quite lenient. Again, you know, there's no absolute say. Like, there's nothing is guaranteed. Like HMRC, like the same two cases could be treated differently by HMRC. It can happen, right? Not this, just because the facts could be slightly different, and the person who's assessing it could be in a better mood or a worse mood. Just like in the legal system, when people committing the same crime don't always get the same um, punishment. So, yeah, let's carry on watching this guy.
And what it does is it pulls from banks, online platforms, overseas tax authorities, property records, and now social media. They have integrated things such as better algorithms and AI machine learning to identify patterns and flag discrepancies. We've also got bank account monitoring, and this is always...
See, again, he's making a statement like they're looking at your social media. They're not, HMRC aren't looking at every single taxpayer's social media. They might, if they're investigating someone, they might then look at that person's social media to see whether, if they're saying something that they do on social media, whether that matches with the kind of information that's actually present on there. Now, using social media can be a good thing and a bad thing. You could even use it to your advantage to make things more, tax efficient, as they say. Like, because essentially, like on social media, you could be your advertiser, and then that opens up so many more expenses that you could claim, so many more things that you might have purchased and used in the business, that then all of a sudden, where you weren't too sure whether you could claim that before as an expense, now you know for certain you can claim it because you're fulfilling this whole other function of the business that requires all these other expenses to be spent, like whatever you can think of, advertising, whatever you think is necessary for your business to advertise, right? So you could be running a hair salon, but you decide that you need to have like a VW buggy or some random weird car that you think is fit for your branding, for your type of customers, for your kind of market that you're trying to go for. And then you could justify that if you put some logos on there, if you put your branding on there. Sometimes even without branding, it's possible to justify these expenses. It really is a case of what the narrative is. And, it's not, some things are clear cut, other things are not. And that's where you can play the game. That's where you can create a story that HMRC essentially can't falsify.
been in place, but the banks have to report certain transactions automatically. Large cash deposits, transfers from overseas, any regular income that just doesn't match declared earnings. And this is becoming easier for them to report because they can just easily link these systems, so it flags a lot quicker. Like I said, there's platform reporting, which that...
Yeah, fair enough. So, like I said, it's easier for them to flag cases, but that doesn't mean that they're just gonna be able to just raid so many cases and take it all the way to completion.
It could be online or crypto. And there's all these sharing across the board of tax jurisdictions ultimately. So there's international cooperation. The common reporting standard means that tax authorities throughout the world are now sharing more information than ever before because they do appreciate in their hand of everything. And when they see that, they think, this person knows what they're doing. They don't really realize, or lots of people don't realize, if you're generating income outside of PAYE, you are running a business. And if you're running a business, you're entitled to deduct allowable expenses. Now, let me just give you an example. I said at the start, if you're making cakes for your local community, but let's just say you're making cakes, right? You make 3,000 revenue, so not lots of money, but HMRC writes to you and says that you haven't declared this. You panic and go, oh no, I owe tax on £3,000. But hold on, you bought ingredients, right? You bought the flour, the eggs, the packaging, you bought lots of equipment. You use part of your home for baking. You drive to deliver those cakes. Do end up paying more than they should. And think about it from HMRC's side. They're not going to tell you because it's not in their interest for you to be tax efficient. It's not. If you get it wrong, it opens the door for them to...
There's a part here that was interesting.
You bought ingredients, right? You bought the flour, the eggs. That £3,000 revenue, that figure that they have, you might actually owe tax only on 500 because of those legitimate expenses. And you only pay tax on profit, not revenue. That's tax efficiency, understanding the rules and using them properly. But most people just don't know this. They don't know what's allowable. They don't know how to calculate it properly. So they do end up paying more than they should. And think about it from HMRC's side. They're not going to tell you because it's not in their interest for you to be tax efficient. It's not.
It's, again, just completely not true. HMRC have actually really upped the game on the guidance that they provide just on the website that anyone can look up. And literally, you can just go to ChatGPT and put in detail what your business is doing, what kind of transactions they're operating in, and ChatGPT can give you all the answers. It will tell you exactly which allowances you can claim, which allowances you should be claiming. It'll tell you which forms you have to file. Like, it's actually a really good place for anyone who wants to make sure that their accountant is actually filing everything correctly to check on ChatGPT, and then it gives you a list of things that should have been done, and you can ask your accountant for the copies of those things, and then that's when you know whether it's done or not, right? Now, this guy's telling you that HMRC don't want to tell you about the allowances. That's not true. HMRC actually want you to know about the allowances, and they want you to claim them, and they want you to claim them correctly, right? Now, it's a complicated thing because overall, from like a government surveillance level, yeah, HMRC, it's the organization that's out there to take money from you. But at the same time, within the organization, there's obviously good people that are working for the right side, and there's other people who are just just dickheads. So the reality is, it's not always so black and white, and the the guidance is available. You can just ask ChatGPT; it will give you references to the HMRC manual for you to verify to make sure it's getting everything right. Because obviously, ChatGPT can make mistakes. But I use it all the time. I use it to check my own knowledge. I use it to check what's updated in the current tax year. Pretty much every time I'm trying to file some kind of work for a client, I'll just have a look on there just to make sure that there's nothing new that HMRC have popped up recently, right? So it's like it's not something that's going to guarantee that you're getting everything right, but it'll get you probably 99% there. And if you're someone who's trying to do your accounts absolutely correctly, and you don't want to stretch any of the allowances, expenses, or you don't want to put anything that's a bit questionable through the accounts, then ChatGPT is your best friend. And find an accountant if you really can't be bothered to file those things yourself. But it's not that difficult to file it yourself. Like you can actually get ChatGPT to check your work. ChatGPT can even produce the accounts for you. And if you're like a small business person, like honestly, and if you've got a bit of time on your hand, it's really not a bad thing to do. Like, mainly because the problem is like finding a good accountant is difficult to begin with, right? Unfortunately, I've come across so many accountants that don't do the work, that don't file anything on time, and then when they get the penalties, like they get the client to pay for the penalties. And to be honest with you, I've been in situations where I've been in those positions, but when it's been my fault, I've covered the penalties for them, or I've done something extra for them without charging them to make sure that they're not out of pocket. Sometimes these things can happen, but there's a lot of accounts out there that are making like 200, 300,000 pounds a year that I know personally. But at the same time, the amount of complaints I've heard about those accountants from other people is kind of shocking. Um, so really, it's just a bit of a strange time where you could pay someone like £1,000, £1,500, and they could be registered with the Chartered Accountancy Board, with any of the other accounting boards, and you think you're going to get something, but you get something else. So really, it is up on everyone to understand what your accountant is doing, and when you've got ChatGPT there, there's really no excuse to not know what's supposed to happen.
Not. If you get it wrong, it opens the door for them to have more money and to issue penalties if you've over-declared. So if you're earning money outside of PAYE, don't wait for HMRC to contact you. Get ahead of it, register for self-assessment if you need to, understand the £1,000 training allowance, know when you cross thresholds that do require declaration. Stay informed about changes. MTD is coming in April.
Okay, I think
Are you
that's
ready?
enough, really. Like, if you want to watch this video, go ahead and watch it. It's not particularly useful, in my opinion. And what you don't want to do is you don't want to get yourself fear-mongered into thinking that you just have to blindly comply with everything that's newly coming out. Like, there's still ways to get under the radar. There's still ways to claim, expenses that might not necessarily be. I don't want to say too much. There's still ways to be creative with your accounts, and they're not complicated. You don't even need an accountant to do them. You could do them yourself. Like, I guess I can't really break it down on YouTube, but if you just get in touch with me on Substack, I will happily tell you exactly the kind of things that I do for my clients, that I do for myself. And I don't do this on all my clients. It just depends. I serve them based on what they want. I've got most of my clients are actually they don't want they want to sleep well at night, so they really don't want to stretch anything. They're just very boring, vanilla, and that's what I do for them, and that's fine. That's okay. But I personally think that it's our duty to essentially not comply fully with these kind of tax laws because they're not fair to begin with. Um, it's only like the working class people that generally have to end up paying a lot of taxes proportionally to their total income, whereas people that can really afford to pay more, they just don't pay more, and I mean, that's a whole another conversation. But they do they not only pay their fair share of the taxes, they also do additional things to take more wealth away from us, right? So, inflation goes up, your tax rates go up, but your tax bands get frozen, and your tax allowances get frozen, and your expense allowances get frozen. Like 45p a mile to cover a car journey. That's literally ever since I started accounting from back in 2008, it's been that same rate. Actually, maybe it was 40 when I started, and then it became 45 in 2009 or 10, something stupid like that. And since then, it stayed the same. And imagine how much petrol prices have changed, and how much car maintenance costs these days, how much insurance costs these days. And this 45 pence a mile is still supposed to cover you. Um, it's pretty shocking. So don't fall for these fear-mongering accountants. You have other options. Explore. If you can't speak to your accountant freely and frankly, and talk to them as if he's your best friend, then to be honest with you, you need to find a different accountant. And if you can't find a different accountant and you're not too sure, then go check on ChatGPT. And if you want to be creative, and you think there's ways of reducing your tax bills, but your accountant can't be bothered or is a bit too, straight edge, then you can message me and I can tell you what options they have. There's many, many options, and believe me, at least, like, I don't know, obviously I don't have the stats, but my guess would be that most people, 90% plus people, pay a lot more tax than they need to. And don't fool yourself by thinking that you're doing something ethical by paying more taxes, etc. Where's the tax money going? Like, where is it going? And they don't really need our tax money, do they? There's enough wealth, enough resources in the world for everyone to have a more blissful life than the kind of shit that we live in. So really, it's a duty upon us to make sure that we pay less to these governments, and we keep more for our next generation and for ourselves. Otherwise, slowly, slowly, we're going to lose it all.